You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome to another Best Mock Monday. I'm BJ Kissel, and we have got a very special guest joining us today to give us his best case scenario mock draft for the Kansas City Chiefs this year. None other than Dane Brugler from The Athletic, the guy who produces, I want to say, the quintessential NFL draft guide that everybody takes a look at, from fans to coaches to GMs. Everybody in the league is checking this thing out, man. Dane, we appreciate it. How did the launch of the Beast go this year? It seemed like the feedback, once again, was very positive.
Yeah, it was awesome. Really appreciative of everyone checking it out. It's a year in the making, so the chance to finally be able to share it with everyone, I take a lot of pride in that. And so, make sure to get all the pro day information in there, NFL verified testing data for almost 1,900 prospects in this draft, all the reports, over 400 reports. So it's my rankings might differ from yours and anybody else's, and that's okay. The main takeaway I want people to have from the Beast is just a resource guide. It's a resource with all the information and data and all that. So really appreciate everyone checking it out.
It's one of the guides that I print off. I go to Kinko's. It costs a lot. It's a lot of pages. It's very much worth it, though. But you print that thing off. You get it bound. You can flip through it easily. And it's not just the grades, but the background information that you put in there is really what separates that guide, your guide, from a lot of the other ones that are out there, is that you really have a lot of information that you can't find in other places. So I couldn't recommend it more highly to anybody out there that's listening, hasn't checked it out yet. They can find that on all of your social media platforms. But Dan, I'm excited to get to your take on what the Kansas City Chiefs should do in this draft. It's a special time. I mean, everybody in Kansas City is buzzing right now, a couple months removed from winning a Super Bowl, and we get to host the NFL draft here in Kansas City. They've got 10 picks as we stand right now. I'd be surprised if they end up taking all of these picks, but for the sake of this mock, we had you pick players based on if they didn't make any trades, just for the sake of no trades in this one. But big picture, how do you feel about the Chiefs roster, what Brett Veach and company have done so far in free agency and setting this up to have another draft, hopefully like they did last year?
Yeah, I'm excited to get back down to Kansas City for the draft. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to see all the fans out there. So I'm really excited for that next week. I think ideally you set up your roster so you enter the draft with not having a glaring need, where you could really let the board fall to you, especially a team like the Chiefs, where you're picking at the end of the first round. You don't want to have to go with a specific position. Sometimes it works out like that. Sometimes it doesn't. And, we'll see this year. Is it going to be a receiver? Is it going to be a pass rusher? Is it going to be just truly best available? A lot of different directions this team could go in the first.
Yeah, I think at least locally, a lot of the talk is kind of narrowed down to three positions. With at least that first pick, that's where a lot of the discussion lies. But between wide receiver, edge rusher, and offensive tackle, depending upon who's there, those are the three positions that it's kind of narrowed down now. Cornerback is a sneaky one that could make sense. They had so much success last year, but if value of guys fall that you don't expect to, because this is the time of the year there's about 55 guys projected in the first rounds. If you check out multiple mock drafts and where people are graded, there's always a lot of guys that are projected at some point to go in the first round. But tight end is another one that's been kind of sneaky out there. But let's get into your mock draft and what you have the Chiefs doing. Again, this is your best case scenario. If it fell this way, you would love this draft for the Kansas City Chiefs. And with their first round pick at number 31 overall, a player that a lot of people locally are familiar with in K-State edge rusher Felix Anudike-Uzomah. What is it that you like about him as a player, and what is it that you like about his fit going to Kansas City right here?
6'3", 255 pounds, a guy that is just incredibly disruptive consistently. And he was a guy that wasn't highly heralded as a top recruit. He had to basically edge his way under that Kansas State roster, and he did it. And then once he took over last year, he just couldn't keep him out of the backfield. It was funny being at the combine and talking all these prospects, and consistently each one of them, when you talk about some of the Oklahoma tackles or all the different tackles that were there for the Big 12, they'd tell you, who was the toughest pass rusher you faced this year? oh man, Kansas State, or number 91, the Felix guy, yeah, him. I mean, they all said he was the toughest they went up against because he consistently creates disruption. His ability to understand angles, he's not the bendiest pass rusher out there, but he is a guy that can get upfield, threaten the corner. He can flatten. The motor is nonstop. He has some body flexibility, so it's not just I'm going to rush down the middle of you. I'm not just I have to win with speed. He can win in different ways, and so this is a guy that maybe doesn't check every box in terms of being a top tester and this and that, but you just can't deny the production. You can't deny the tape. There's a lot to like about how he fits the Steve Spagnuolo and that scheme. And how that might be the best case scenario for where they're looking with that 31st pick.
Yeah, I know it would be special. I mean, for a Kansas City kid to get drafted to the Chiefs in his hometown. I've heard he's going to be having a party somewhere in Kansas City. I think he's over on the Lee Summit or Blue Springs area, but I'm sure that would be special if it plays out this way for Felix Anudike-Uzomah. And at least a third of most college sports fans in Kansas City, whether it's KU, K-State, Mizzou, could be excited about that pick. But let's move on to the second round pick that you've gotten as a player that has been creating some buzz around this area, a player that we've talked about before on these mock drafts. But Tyler Scott, the wide receiver out of Cincinnati. What is it, Dane, that you love about Tyler Scott?
The moment he declared, I sent out a tweet, and I was just wait, guys. You're going to figure out more about Tyler Scott. I promise you this. He's one of my favorite players in the draft. 5'10", 180 pounds. The size does not wow you. And I feel like Tyler Lockett gets overused as a comparison every single draft cycle. But I believe Tyler Scott has Tyler Lockett type potential. He has that type of ability to be win at all three levels. Has hit his just take his touchdown production the last 2 years, for example. 14 touchdown catches the last 2 years. All 14 were at least 20 yards through the air, and he averaged on those 14 touchdowns 44.6 yards per touchdown catch. So he just is a big play waiting to happen. When you watch him, you wouldn't guess that this is a guy that's pretty new to wide receiver. But in high school, he was part of an option offense. I asked him straight up, how many catches do you think you had in your entire high school career? He said, maybe 10. So this is a guy that has not been playing the position all that long, but you would not guess that just watching his tape. Could he use a little more route refinement? Sure. Does he have a few drops? Yes. But for a guy that's 5'10", he's not afraid to go climb the ladder, make plays, snatch the ball away from his frame. I think you want to play him inside, you can play him outside. He has some return experience. So there's a lot to like about Tyler Scott and what he brings to your offense immediately, but also that he's going to keep growing, and that explosive speed that he offers, a lot to like there. We went a 4.4 at the combine, then a 4.37 at the pro day. So Tyler Scott, if he's still there at the end of the second round, I think it's tremendous value for the Chiefs.
I want to ask you this because you're familiar with the different programs, and I don't know, you could watch the highlights and I get an idea of what he is as an athlete, just like all the fans and everybody out there listening. But for the offense that they put in, and I know Joseph Hefner does sports data analytics for us on our Substack, wrote about Andy Reid and young or rookie wide receivers stepping in and grasping this offense, because you and I have talked about it over the years. In that, a lot of their play calls, their concepts, they have to read the defense. They have to know where the leverage of the linebackers, where to sit, how to get in the ABC windows for Patrick Mahomes. And if you don't know where you're standing, or if you don't know where to go, not only is that bad for you individually, but you could be pulling defenders into areas that they shouldn't be based on, again, the look of where everybody needs to see it the same way. Based on Cincinnati's offense, how much mentally do you feel like Tyler Scott had on him to be able to step into a system like Andy Reid's that has not lent itself to rookies necessarily stepping in and making a big impact right away? How do you feel that side of his game, that mental acuity for him to learn the position? You mentioned lining up in different spots, but are you comfortable with him going into an offense that puts so much on the wide receiver position?
Yeah, I think so. And, just talking to him, getting a sense for him as a person and his mental capacity and all of that, I feel pretty good about that. And I think this is going to be a conversation no matter which receiver the Chiefs draft in the first 3 rounds, is having expectations based off of what they're going to be asked to do. But you watch him on tape and you can see him creating that vertical push and really selling his routes. You understand you can see based off his eyes what he's reading and what he's not being asked to do. So is there going to be a little bit of a learning curve? Absolutely. But I would have no worries about this player in that offense.
Awesome. And Chiefs have had good luck getting pass catchers out of the University of Cincinnati over the last however many years. So there's a connection there as well. All right, let's move on to that third pick, number 95 overall in the third round. Player that I wasn't familiar with, but I had a lot of fun watching his tape. That's Jalen Duncan, the offensive tackle out of Maryland. Again, you're hitting all three of those positions that we talked about. Even before we set him up, you're on top of it. You've got defensive end, edge rusher, wide receiver with the second pick, and now addressing tackle. A lot of the conversations, at least locally, had been, where are the pockets of those offensive tackles? Seems like there's going to be a handful of them that go in the first. What is it that you love about Duncan right here in the third round for the Chiefs?
Duncan is a perplexing prospect. You really like the tools. 6'5.5", 306 pounds, moves really well. But, there's some things about his game that bother you a little bit. And that's why we're talking about him as a late third rounder and not someone that's off the board at the top 50 picks. Coming into the year, I thought this might be a top 50 player. But his senior year just did not go as planned. His testing was average. It wasn't anything to get overly excited about. And so, it always worries me when I see a player gain a lot of weight or lose a lot of weight between their combine and their pro day. And that's something that's in the draft guide is I'll tell you exactly the weight that he was at the combine and then the exact weight he was at the pro day. It's always interesting to look at that. Duncan was 16 pounds more at his pro day than he was at the combine. And to me, that's a little bit of a red flag. Like, okay, you took your foot off the pedal a little bit. Like, so, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why Duncan with his tools, we're talking about him as a third or fourth round pick and not someone that's locked to go in the top 50. But again, this is the point of the draft where there's a little bit of risk involved. And with Jalen Duncan, there's some risk here. This is an impressive mover. He has good foot quickness. You can see him, throw on the tape. You can see him hold up on an island, use his hands well. But again, something that bothers me the most about Duncan was his worst tape this past year. It came in the biggest games. So you throw on Ohio State, you throw on Michigan, you throw on Penn State. The three best opponents Maryland faced this year, those were probably his three worst games. And to me, it's a little bit of a red flag. But again, he has the tools, has the traits. He's going to need time to be coached up more and more. But when we're talking about late third round, I think this is the type of value you're looking at.
All right, let's move on to the next pick. And this one is a player that most Chiefs fans are going to hope doesn't play anytime soon, to be completely honest. And that's not any kind of disrespect to the player. But you can't not look at Jaren Hall, the cornerback out of BYU. Think about him joining the Chiefs. If this is the spot that around you have him being drafted, the connection, I guarantee you Andy Reid has watched a lot of Jaren Hall play football just with his BYU connections. But what is it that you love about Jaren Hall to get in there and compete with Shane Buechele as the Chiefs' backup quarterback now that Chad Henne is retired and is busy making commercials and doing all kinds of fun things that he seems like he's been doing lately in his recent retirement?
Yeah, and let me point out that I did this mock trying to be as realistic as possible. And I think that fans need to accept that quarterback 2, it's if you just list the most important positions on a football team, quarterback 2 is higher than some starting positions elsewhere. Some teams, and every team's different. You don't know exactly how the Chiefs, where quarterback 2 ranks, but their quarterback 2 might be more important than your right guard. It might be more important than your, outside linebacker. So getting that quarterback 2 is really, really important. And if they believe Jaren Hall from BYU is an ideal fit, which I think he would be an ideal fit as a backup, I would not be surprised at all if in the fourth round, and we're talking about pick, 122 here. So, this isn't a top 100 pick. I know I'm being very defensive right now, I know. But I know a lot of fans are going to love seeing a quarterback here. But you know what? If you can lock down your backup quarterback spot with pick 122, the Chiefs, I don't think would have any problem pulling that trigger and doing that. And Hall, I think, is a great fit with what he offers skill set wise. And just the way he's able to step in from day one and be that guy behind Patrick Mahomes. So I think there's a lot of connections here that make a ton of sense.
Yeah, and so much of it being the backup quarterback is also what kind of value do you provide Patrick Mahomes sitting in that room and watching film with him and giving looks and being just kind of a soundboard for him to be able to bounce things off of. And the guys that are very good at that, you see have long careers in the NFL as backup quarterbacks or other spots. So, but again, going back, if Jaren Hall is the pick right here at 122 for the Chiefs in the 4th round, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Chiefs fans are upset, but then you go back to Andy Reid, like just go ahead and trust him to take a quarterback from his alma mater right there to back Patrick Mahomes or to compete with Shane Buechele and Chris Oladokun for that backup spot. All right, let's move on to the second pick in the 4th round that the Chiefs have at 134. Texas linebacker Demarion Overshown, another fun player. I talk about energy givers. Dane, when I was watching this film, what is it that you love about Demarion Overshown for the Chiefs right here in the 4th round?
Versatility. He's recruited as a safety. They played him at DB a little bit. Then he moved to linebacker. His final year at Texas, they played him as more of an edge player. So he's got range. He's got explosiveness. He can really run. You can do a lot of different things. And I think at the very least, you're feeling really good about the impact on special teams that he's going to give you. But I think his ability to play the entire field, that range is to cover tight ends, but also, work off of blocks and make stops against linebackers. Put him as part of your linebacker rotation, and I think you're feeling pretty good about the value here in the late 4th.
Absolutely. We are halfway through the Best Mock Monday with the Athletics' Dane Brugler. To recap, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, the defensive end from K-State, with the first pick, then Tyler Scott, wide receiver out of Cincinnati. Offensive tackle Jalen Duncan out of Maryland with their 3rd round pick, and then the 2 4th round picks, Jaren Hall, quarterback out of BYU, and then Demarion Overshown, linebacker out of Texas. We will get the final 5 picks on Dane Brugler's Best Mock Monday here on KC Sports Network right after this quick break.
Whether you're a Chiefs, Royals, Sporting KC, KC Current, K-State, KU, or Mizzou fan, we've got you covered. Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Kansas City, the NFL draft is almost here. It's a fantastic time for our city. Make sure you're staying locked into us here at KC Sports Network because we've got the draft covered. Chiefs have 10 picks. We'll see how many they actually use, but there's one selection that every football fan can share, and that's an ice-cold Miller Lite. The players change, the coaches change, the rules change. But Miller Lite is still the perfect beer for draft time, game time, and everything in between. Personally, when I want a beer with some flavor, but it's also light and won't make me feel bad, Miller Lite has been a go-to. It's light on calories, not taste. What's the point of drinking beer if you can't taste it? Till kickoff comes around again, enjoy the beer that tastes like the season. Miller Lite, great taste, 96 calories. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/KCSN. Or you can pick up some Miller Lite pretty much anywhere they sell beer. It's Miller time. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
Welcome back to Best Mock Monday. We're hanging out with Dane Brugler from The Athletic and the guy who produces the quintessential #1 draft guide in the NFL. So make sure to check that out. It's affectionately known as The Beast. All right, Dane, we've gone through your first 5 picks. Let's get the final 5 picks starting in the 5th round. Defensive lineman out of Toledo, DeJuan Johnson. Dane, what is it that you love about DeJuan Johnson?
He is disruptive, a little bit undersized, and might be a little bit different than some of the defensive linemen the Chiefs have gone for recently. 6'2", 285, under 32-inch arms. But man, you throw on the tape, and this guy loves to be in enemy territory. He finds his way in the backfield, and he forces that offensive backfield to really kind of play on their toes because he can get back there and really disrupt things. So nose for the ball in the run game. He's actually with his that initial quickness, maybe a better run defender than pass rusher, even given his size. So his ability to shoot gaps, be disruptive, that's what you're getting with Johnson, a guy that I know the Chiefs have shown some interest in. And I think in order to get him, might have to be here in the 5th round.
All right. And we've seen defensive line coach Joe Cullen was focusing on the defensive run game last year, or getting those guys after the quarterbacks. Had a chance to talk with him out at the combine when we were sitting right next to your table. Joe Cullen had a chance to come sit down with us, and he got the most out of the Chiefs defensive line. We saw a handful of players have the best years of their career. Guys like Mike Dana, and before he got injured, Turk Wharton, Colin Saunders, Chris Jones probably had the best year of his career. Saw Frank Clark have a great year. And so getting some more young defensive linemen for Joe Cullen and his staff and that whole defensive staff to work with would be a welcome sight. DeJuan Johnson is one of those names that for this area of the draft that is picking up a little buzz. You said the Chiefs are talking to him. That's a great sign. So move on to the next position, running back, Sean Tucker out of Syracuse. Another fun player who's got a little more burst. Dane, not that I've watched all these guys, but for his size and stature, shows a little more acceleration and burst than I expected when I first turned the tape on.
That might be what it does best. I mean, he's got a track background. I think maybe his best tape is when you get the ball in his hands on screens, where he has some blockers in front of him, can use that speed and go make something happen. This is also a player with a medical tag, and so that's why he's available here in the 6th round, as opposed to the 3rd or the 4th or earlier in the draft. And then you look at the running back depth chart for the Chiefs with Pacheco and Edwards-Helaire, and I think you can take a swing here in the early 6th round on a guy like this who has talent, and hopefully he's able to stay healthy, because if he does, he could look like a massive steal at this point.
Yeah, let's move on to the next pick. Another offensive skill position player, and the second wide receiver taken. Again, going back, taking Tyler Scott, the wide receiver out of Cincinnati, in the 2nd round at number 63, and now in the 6th round at number 217 overall, wide receiver out of Charlotte, Grant DuBose. What is it that you like about Grant DuBose?
I wanted to go with a little bit more size here for the Chiefs, to that depth chart. 6'2.5", over 200 pounds. Not a straight burner, but he's a guy that will go up and get the football. So you see fluidity, you see the body control. He can work in traffic, very strong hands, and a guy that, for a big man, he has very quick feet. So in and out of his breaks really quickly, off the line really quickly, and he has some juice after the catch. So he'll break a tackle. He will sidestep a defender, make somebody miss. And so he's a guy that you add to the mix, give you a little bit more size as opposed to the speed, but I think he'd be a nice complement to what they already have.
And I like the idea of taking 2 wide receivers in this draft. And some Chiefs fans might be confused just because recently we've seen him sign former Giants wide receiver Richie James. They just re-signed Justin Watson. But none of those guys and none of the other really contracts that what they've done this offseason would preclude them from bringing more guys into the mix. And I think wide receiver has been probably the most discussed topic amongst Chiefs fans this year, just because of what they've lost, and that Juju Smith-Schuster was lost this offseason. You really didn't have a lot of guys coming back that put up a lot of production outside of, obviously, Travis Kelce being the number 1 option in the passing game. But as far as wide receivers goes, it's kind of going to be fun to watch these guys compete if it stays the way that it has, and not bringing any other veterans that we know that have gone out and produced at the NFL level. There's been a lot of talk locally, Dane, about Justin Ross. He's been the darling of the offseason.
Fingers crossed. I mean, you just hope that he can stay on the field. That's for sure.
I can guarantee there's nobody rooting against him for sure. There are a lot of people that are saying, let's pause before we just hand the number 3 wide receiver position to somebody that hasn't stepped on a football field in an NFL regular season game yet. But you do have some guys, Justin Watson, again, Richie James had some success, had some production at the NFL level. And then you got Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Kadarius Toney. But you need health. But I like the idea of getting 2 young guys, getting it into that mix and letting them compete. Let's move on to the 2 7th-round picks. The first one being a position that we talked about at the top of the show that has been a popular one amongst Chiefs fans, looking at what, at least for the analysts that we've talked to so far, Dane, that the depth at the tight end position in this draft has been kind of praised by a lot of different people that we've talked to. And you have the Chiefs selecting Blake Whiteheart, tight end out of
Wake Forest.
Out of Wake Forest, yes. Yep. What is it that you love about Blake Whiteheart?
Yeah, and a little undersized, 245 pounds, but when a tight end runs a 6'7" 3-cone, that makes you sit up and say, okay, this guy can move. And when you watch him on tape, doesn't have a ton of production, wasn't a huge part. That Wake Forest offense was all to the receivers. They didn't utilize the tight end that much, and so I think that's allowed Whiteheart to be a little bit overlooked. NFL teams aren't overlooking this guy. I mean, there's a reason he was invited to the combine. There's a reason teams have done a lot of work on Whitehart and what he could potentially be at the next level. So I think maybe he's closer to that Noah Gray type of prospect as opposed to a Travis Kelce. I mean, no one's Travis, but this guy has a lot of things that you could step in and be a capable pass catcher from day one. Doesn't drop the football. He had 0 drops this past year. Does not put the football on the ground. He gets open. If he can give you, some functional blocking, if you want him doing that up front. So there's a lot of things you can work with Whitehart. And, I agree. This is a loaded tight end class. So at some point, I think it makes sense for this team to address the position.
And I think whoever ends up being the tight end that's drafted, I'd be surprised if in this draft they didn't end up with one, even though we talked about this on the KCSN draft show yesterday, that the Chiefs have 4 tight ends on their roster. They have Noah Gray, Blake Bell was re-signed, and then you've got Jody Fortson and obviously Travis Kelce, but it's not going to preclude them from drafting a guy that they like and getting another young tight end, whoever it ends up being, to be able to work with Travis Kelce every day and watch the way he goes about his business, and to watch the way that he practices running his routes, and that there's a reason that he's considered the best to ever do it in Kansas City, and you can have that debate however you want. But one of the best tight ends in NFL history at minimum. The way that he goes about his business, the way that he prepares, all of those things, extremely valuable for a player to spend a couple years, 3 years, however long Travis wants to continue playing. That would be huge for Blake Whitehart, whoever they end up taking. All right, let's get to your final pick for the Kansas City Chiefs, player that has been mocked to him before. We've done this with, I think, Trevor Sikkema had the same player drafted around this same time. Nick Jones, cornerback out of Ball State. Again, talk about energy givers, guys that aren't afraid of the moment, afraid to go out there and play with a little flair. Nick Jones definitely seems to be one of those players.
Yeah, and you think about the success that this team had finding corners on day 3 last year. Nick Jones could definitely be in that same vein. He can make plays on special teams. He's got multiple blocked punts in his career. He had 14 passes defended as a corner last year. Could play nickel. There's a lot of optimism. I heard from several scouts throughout the fall, like, hey, make sure you check out this Ball State corner. Make sure you check out number 1 there, Jones. Plenty of love on the streets for this guy as someone, and he's still young. He's a senior, but he didn't turn 22 until October. So he's a young player, still growing, and he just has a knack for being in the right place at the right time. And in the 7th round, this is the type of corner I want to take a swing on and see what we have down the road.
All right, those are your 10 picks. Again, we'll run through them here real quick for anybody listening to the audio. Again, we appreciate if you're watching on YouTube or listening to the audio. We're hanging out with Dane Brugler from The Athletic, and his best case scenario, best mock Monday for us here for the Chiefs is Felix Anudike-Uzomah with the first round pick, then Tyler Scott, wide receiver out of Cincinnati, Jalen Duncan, offensive tackle out of Maryland, then Jaron Hall, quarterback out of BYU, Demarion Overshone, linebacker out of Texas, DeJuan Johnson, defensive lineman from Toledo, running back out of Syracuse, Sean Tucker, wide receiver out of Charlotte, Grant DeBose, and the 2 7th-round picks we just talked about, Blake Whitehart, tight end out of Wake Forest, and Nick Jones, cornerback out of Ball State. Real quick, the totality of that draft, what is it about this group that is your best case scenario for the Chiefs? Why do you love it so much?
You're checking boxes. You want to add a potential playmaker at receiver. Okay, you did that with Tyler Scott. For the now and for the future, you want to add a tackle you can work with, you can develop. You did that with Jalen Duncan. You wanted to find an answer for quarterback too. I think you did it with Jared Hall. And then, you want to add another pass rusher to the mix. Okay, you take the local kid with Azuki Adama. So I think that you're hitting a lot of buttons with what this team, what we think, this team might do on draft weekend. So I tried to go as realistic as possible with these picks. Not necessarily maybe what everyone, the fan favorite for every pick, but I think what we could realistically see happen over those 3 days here coming up here pretty soon.
You guys have all been pretty close. We've done 3 of these now. It's always interesting for what you consider a realistic spot. There's people who do this for a living, not just fans saying, well, what if this second rounder happens to fall to the 4th or whatever it is? But within the grades that you have, man, we appreciate it. We're going to say goodbye to you now. But before we do that, we are coming back after the break. We're going to be talking with Connor Updegrove from CCVI. ask everybody to stay and listen to that. They do some phenomenal work in the community. Dane, but before we throw to this break, can you give people an idea of where they can find your content and where and how they can get a hold of the beast?
Just have to be a subscriber to The Athletic. That's all you need, and it's included. So even if you want to sign up for a month and get all of our great draft coverage, I've got a 7-round mock-up today. I think it's $2 right now to sign up for a month, and you get the draft guide as part of that. You're not going to find a better value out there. So go to The Athletic, go to my Twitter. It's pinned at the top, the link to get the draft guide. So if you like to draft at all, I promise you will not be disappointed by what the draft guide has to offer.
And I can attest to that as somebody that's printed off every year, I think for like 6 or 7 straight years. I have these huge booklets. I get them bound all nicely and spend the extra money to make sure it doesn't fall apart because I want that thing to stay together. And honestly, Dane, even when they sign a guy like 3 years after he's drafted, and I don't know, I go back to your draft guide. I'm like, okay, what was the background? Like, what are the stories? Always good stuff, not just that year, but in the years to follow. But man, we appreciate your time. Thanks everybody for listening. We're going to be right back after this break.
Whether you're a Chiefs, Royals, Sporting KC, KC Current, K-State, KU, or Mizzou fan, we've got you covered. Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network. Proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
All right, Chiefs Kingdom, welcome back to Best Mock Monday. Great stuff there from Dane Brugler breaking down his best case scenario, his best mock draft here on Monday. And to wrap up this show, I've got a special guest that I'm excited to talk to and give him a chance to talk to you about what he's been working on and what his phenomenal organization has been working on. If you're obviously a supporter of KCSN and you're listening to this show, you've probably heard the ads about the CCVI trolley run that's coming up on the Sunday after the NFL draft. And we're talking one of the people who is tasked with making this thing happen and making this thing a success, Mr. Connor Updegrove from CCVI. Connor, man, we appreciate you spending some time with us.
God, BJ, thank you so much for having me. It's great to start my week here. And, I always said it's a really good week when I get to do 2 things, which is 1, go for a run, and 2 is listen to y'all's podcast. And it's a heck of a day when I can do both those at the same time. So thanks for having me.
That's the goal. Try to create as much content as we can to hit people, whether they're supposed to be working or working out or driving around in their cars, whatever it is. We appreciate however people listen to our content here. But Connor, for people who aren't familiar with CCVI, can you give a little bit of a history behind what the trolley run is and kind of what the organization does for kids in our community?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the CCVI Trolley Run is the largest fundraiser for Children's Center for the Visually Impaired, which is a nonprofit here in Kansas City that's been around for 70 years. And the Trolley Run itself has been around for 35 of those years. So we've been running through the streets of Waldo, Brookside, and Country Club Plaza every Sunday, the last Sunday in April, to really change the lives of kids who are blind or have low vision.
So how did you get started in this personally? Like, what was your call to get involved with an organization? Like, there's so many phenomenal organizations out there, obviously including this one. What was it about this one that made you really interested in helping and giving your time for it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually ran a trolley run when I was 6 years old. It was the first race that I ever ran in Kansas City. And I actually, on the Monday following the race in my 2nd grade classroom, I had a project where I had to draw a picture of, what my weekend looked like. And so I have a picture from, 20 years ago that has a picture of me running the trolley run. And, it really kind of set the precedent for, what I've done for the rest of my life. I've always wanted to help kids who are blind or have low vision, and particularly kids with special needs in general. My mom is a special education teacher of 30 years. So the segue was really natural. And, for all of your audience who, is listens to KCSN for their favorite draft content and everything like that, you're kind of wondering, why is this random guy crashing it? And you just want to hear who the Chiefs will take at 31 or whether or not Deuce Vaughn should be drafted in the 4th round. I promise you that's well beyond my area of expertise, but I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that CCVI really has been a staple of the community in Kansas City. And the draft is genuinely going to be one of the highlights of this entire town. And so for us to be able to share that weekend with, an event that has the world stage is something that's really special to us. 100% of the proceeds for the trolley run go to providing therapy, education, specialized services to these kids. And families on both sides of the state come to us too. I think the coolest thing about Children's Center for the Visually Impaired is that when a kid comes to us, their family is often told what they can't do. And we like to focus at CCVI on what their child can do. Blindness is just a diagnosis. It's not a disability. And so we really like to be able to have that happen.
When people are listening to this and they want to know how to support it, we're going to hit this a couple of times, but if people want to get involved, can you give some details of the event, how people can sign up, and what they could expect if they do sign up and want to come out and support getting out? And yeah, to your point, like just the way that KC is rallying around this, it'd be a special time to run through those areas and just see the impact that this draft is having. But if people want to support it, what can they do?
Yeah. So the very first thing you can do if you want to support CCVI is just participate in the trolley run. You can go to trolleyrun.org and sign up for the race. And I promise you, there is no athletic ability required to do it. You can walk, you can run. We have our CCVI families of kids who are 5 years old who will get out of the stroller and walk across the finish line. So it's really an event where everyone is welcome, regardless of your athletic background. The second thing you can do is consider a donation too. You know, the work that we do is truly exceptional, and we aid school districts all across Missouri and Kansas to make sure that kids get the best education they receive. You know, we talk about the world stage and everything like that, and CCVI is only one of 5 schools across the country that does the work that we do with our kids. So a donation, whether it's $5, $10, $100, it goes a mile for these kids. I promise you that. So those are the 2 big ways.
Yeah, and you can find the link to that he just mentioned in the description of both the podcast and the video version. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find the link. You can figure out how to support. Connor, people want to come out and do the trolley run. It's not just the run. You've got a bunch of events and activations around that. Besides just coming out and running, which people that have been following me on social media know what I did to my ankle a couple of days ago. I could barely walk around, let alone get out there and run. But if people do want to come out, you got more than just the race that's going on. What else can people expect that want to come out on that Sunday?
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff going on. So we will have free beer for anyone who participates in the race. It's always a huge hit for our, plus 21 folks out there. We'll have a rock climbing wall. We'll have music playing. And then my favorite part is actually our kids run. So we have a choose your own distance for kids to be able to do that. So if you want to bring the family out and you don't want to run, but you want, your little toddlers to run, that's okay too. They're more than welcome. So really, and that's kind of the last thing we do on race day is that kids run. And that is probably the most special experience you'll ever see on the Country Club Plaza. It's funny because I was thinking about, the NFL draft. It's such a hopeful event. For one night, every team feels like they just won the Super Bowl. And I can promise you that when you see our students cross the finish line whose parents have been told your child can't see or your child can't sit up on their own, and when they cross the finish line of the trolley run, they feel like they just won the Super Bowl. And so really just getting to experience that and watch it, that's really what the trolley run is about. And we want everyone to come out.
That just sounds awesome. And kind of appreciate all of the information and you coming on. And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. And I know there's probably dozens and dozens. You don't want to feel like you left anyone out, but just to give our listeners or viewers some context to what it matters to kind of walk in your shoes for a day. Is there a particular story? Maybe it's somebody who's going to be running this year, a kid who's in the program now, that kind of can personalize a little bit more for the listeners about what the work you're doing and what kind of impact you've seen from somebody that if they do want to go out and support the trolley run, somebody they might see out there right now and what this program and what your organization has done for them.
Oh my gosh, BJ, I have hundreds of stories of kids that I could share with you. But, the one that really sticks out in my mind right now is one of our family teams, actually. During the race, we have CCVI families who make custom T-shirts, and then on the back, they get to have their team names. So people really know kind of who they're running for. And one team name is Artie's Party Animal. So it's a student at CCVI whose name is Arthur. And Arthur is, to quote his mother, dynamite. He is the most excited little boy you'll ever meet. He is a ball full of energy. And really, I think the coolest thing for Arthur and his story is the fact that, his mom and his family have really invested themselves in the community with other parents too. Beth, his mother, really wants to go the extra mile and connect with other families, that have a child who have a visual impairment and really, make sure that they feel connected to CCVI to make it one big family. And so that's something really cool too, is that kind of, family network that's created for it. But, Arthur will be out there on race day with Artie's Party Animals, and they're encouraging everyone who runs the race to dress up like your favorite animal and do the 4 miles that way, which is going to be really, really incredible. And I think the biggest thing that they have said that I always love is everyone's the same and everyone's different. And that's something that really stuck with me. And it's something that I think about a lot when I get to see our kids.
That's an amazing message that anybody living in Kansas City can take to heart right now with everything that's going on, not just nationally, but within our own community. But Connor, man, appreciate you coming on. Again, that's trolley.run.org. And you can use code KCSN if you sign up. You get a few bucks off that registration. But again, that's trolley.run.org. Connor, thank you so much for joining. I can't wait to talk with you after and figure out how the event went down. We've got something going on at the same time, but and got a bum wheel. Otherwise, I will be out there. We'll be out there in the future to get out there and support you guys and your organization. And we'll continue to discuss and figure out ways that we can help you at KCSN going forward, man. But good luck with everything. Hope it goes well. And hopefully Kansas City shows up just like they always do for great organizations just like yourself.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me.
All right. Appreciate everybody for listening and watching this episode. Thank you to Dane Brugler for dropping by and giving us his takes on what he thinks a best case scenario would be for the Kansas City Chiefs. You know, we'll have plenty more content over the next couple of weeks getting you ready for the NFL draft. You can find everything that we're doing for the NFL draft on our social channels. And don't forget to download our brand new app that we just launched this week as well. You can find it by searching KC Sports Network on the Apple App Store or on Google Play. We appreciate all of you. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network, the fastest growing sports media network in Kansas City. Check out these videos that feature our team of more than 15 former players, insiders, and analysts bringing you the best Chiefs coverage you can find. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.